Hi everyone, my name is Beth Fioretta, and today I'd like to go through with you some analysis and visualizations I did on a data set I found regarding aircraft wildlife strikes. I'm an incredibly fearful flyer, and one of the things that's always bothered me is my perception that a single bird can bring down an entire aircraft. And although the Miracle on the Hudson yielded us a hero in Captain Sully, for flyers like me who are very, very afraid of flying, this was not at all reassuring. So I decided to dig into this data and determine if my fears were realistic or unwarranted. And some of the things I was hoping to find out is where and when are these strikes most often happening, what types of birds are being collided with, which airlines and aircraft are most likely to have a collision, and what really are the odds of hitting a bird, and what is the impact when it does happen. I started with a data set that I found on data.gov and limited it to the years 2011 to 2015 and the continental US only. This yielded me about 15,000 rows of data. In addition, I found statistics I needed regarding airports, where they're located, and the volume of flights in and out of those airports, as well as additional data about the total flights within the continental US on the years that I was interested in. The first thing I wanted to know is how prevalent are these strikes and where are they happening? So here's the strikes that happened in January of 2011, and I then plotted out by month the strikes that happened from then until December of 2015. So I can play that for you and we'll see what it looks like. So each little explosion on the screen is indicating where and when a bird collision occurred. And you can see as it gets to December of 2015, there's quite a few, and this is not at all reassuring for somebody like me. So I decided we need to look closer at what was going on here. So the first thing I looked at was a map of the United States where the highest volume of strikes are occurring. And over on the side here, we can narrow down by state and then also by the airports within those states. So being from Connecticut, I wanted to look at Connecticut. There were 125 strikes within the 5 years that I was looking at. The highest majority of them happened at Bradley Airport, and then the smaller airports had lower volumes of strikes. Now, in looking at this, I decided that I also needed to know what the busiest airports were. So down here in the corner, I show by volume the busiest airports within the United States. And you'll see that the largest bubbles within this graph strongly resemble the largest bubbles within the United States, full United States map indicating the collisions. So this tells me that there's nothing really out of the ordinary here. It's purely by volume of flights within these regions that's causing the higher incidence of bird collisions with the aircrafts. Next, I was just curious, what exactly is being hit? So this word cloud shows us the types of birds that are being hit at the highest frequencies. Now I removed the ones that were unclassified, and there were kind of a large number of those, but I'm left with barn swallows, mourning doves, and red-tailed hawks, as well as several others beyond that. I limited this list to 75, but this was more out of a curiosity perspective. I'm certainly not advocating that we eradicate these species to lower the incidence of bird strikes. So next I looked at when do the collisions occur. So over here on the left, we're showing by year the number of collisions as well as what the damage to the planes were. So the first reassuring factor is the blue is indicating that there was actually no damage to the flights. So this is great. And then you see unknown, meaning it wasn't registered within the database, minor damage, substantial damage. And in 2014, we had one little case of the aircraft actually being destroyed. And this is more from an insurance perspective of it was totaled more than the fact that it did not crash and burn. Interestingly, the highest volume of incidents happened during the day. If we do narrow down our chart to just the events that happened during the day, you'll see that it's more than double the ones that happened at night. We also noticed that it is the summer months, well, spring and summer, so May through October, that has the highest incidence. this kind of makes me think that this is, again, a matter of volume of flights more than truly contributing factors to the bird strikes. But it was intriguing to me that they happen most often during the day. So I also wanted to know what other factors such as visibility and weather might play. So I have the same graph over here on the left, but now I'm looking at it from a perspective of were there clouds, some clouds, or overcast, and a precipitation level. So rain, fog, snow, combinations of these. And again, interestingly, we find that the days that have no clouds and no precipitation are the highest incidence of collisions with the birds. So that's interesting again. Over here on the right, we looked at what point during the flight, hold on while I reset this. So at what point during the flight are the collisions happening? So on the bottom, you'll see it indicates whether it happened on approach, landing, climb, takeoff, descent, and so on. And by far, the incidents occur on approach to the airport, the destination airport. So this doesn't set well with me because I'd like to think that once I'm at cruising altitude, I no longer have anything to worry about, but it turns out it's the end of the flight that's most dangerous from a perspective of bird strikes. So the next thing I wanted to look at was airlines, and I wanted to know if any had higher incidence than others and if there was any connection there. So we have operator, you'll see Southwest Airlines followed by business. These are private business planes, and then our other major carriers like American Airlines, Delta, and so on. In this case, Southwest Airlines has, far more than the other airlines. So I thought that was interesting. What are they doing differently than the other airlines? So if we click on them, on the right-hand side, it tells us what types of planes they're flying that are having these collisions. And you'll see that these B737-700s have the highest incidence, again, by far, as any other model of aircraft. And interestingly, if we select just that model, we find that only Southwest Airlines is flying that particular model of planes. Now, I don't know a lot about planes. There might be other models that are very similar that just have slightly different model numbers. I don't know. But I thought that was interesting that one particular model has such a higher incidence of problems and that it's only flown by Southwest Airlines. So maybe there's something about the positioning of the engines on the plane or the structure of those engines themselves that the birds are more likely to get caught up in them. So next I wanted to look at how realistic are my fears, because everything we've looked at has looked pretty dire, right? We've seen a lot of red on these maps and we're seeing a lot of collisions, but on the same hand, we have already noticed that very few of them cause significant damage to the planes. But the other reality is there are nearly 10,000 flights per year 10 million flights per year in the continental U.S. The flights with collisions average somewhere around 3,000, and it's pretty consistent throughout the 5 years that I looked at. You'll see if you hover over each one of them. So this comes out to 0.03% of flights actually have a collision, and we've seen from the prior graphs that in most of those cases, they also did not have any damage. So lastly, I wanted to see, okay, what is the actual impact to the passengers? So this is showing us what the impact on the flight was. In most cases, none. In some cases, a precautionary landing. This one wasn't classified. And we have aborted takeoff and engines shut down. So again, very reassuring to find out that in most cases, there's no impact at all. I also wanted to know about injuries and fatalities. There were no fatalities within the 5 years that I looked at, and there were only 15 injuries. And we can look at each of these injuries, and down here we can see the notes that the pilots took. And if you read through these notes, you'll find that in most cases they were very minor injuries, in some cases some stitches in an arm or leg, but no significant injuries. So that made me feel better as well. So in conclusion, at a high level first glance, it appears that the safest way to avoid a flight that will have a collision with wildlife is to not fly on Southwest Airlines on a B700 737 on a day that is sunny and clear during the spring or summer months. But the reality is these collisions very rarely happen and even more rarely cause damage or injuries. So it is not really a realistic fear and people should go out and travel. Thank you.